Welcome to Whispers to a Bride, where we talk about the stuff no one else is talking about. We are going deep on the emotional aspects of getting married, the stress, drama, and turbulence that affects your own sense of identity and your closest relationships. We are talking about what it means to be a bride and how to navigate this sacred time with more grace and ease. I'm your host, Kara Gasabay. As a life coach and therapist, I'm going to be sharing super practical tips so that you can not only rise to the occasion of your wedding, but also your life. Hello, and welcome back. I am so excited to be here today chatting with you about this concept. I'm sure you've heard it before. It's one of those ideas that comes up on social media all the time, especially like in the self-help world. And that is, how you do one thing is how you do everything. How you do one thing is how you do everything. So I remember I heard this phrase at some point in my life coach training, probably, and it really like stopped me in my tracks. I was like, hold on, right? Like there's something about it that makes you feel like, okay, if I can figure out what that is, then I can solve sort of all of the problems in my life. Now, again, I don't know that there's ever like one phrase or one concept that is the fix all or the cure all. And so let's not like overdo it in the sense of how powerful this can be. That being said, let's not pay attention, right? Let's not undermine the wisdom, right, that is inside of that phrase, especially when we're doing something like planning a wedding. So when we're planning a wedding, we're doing something that feels so different for most people than other parts of their life, right? This is like this huge, usually financial exercise, and it's a big event planning thing, and it's a big social engagement, and it's also a very sacred ceremony involving like religion and tradition and all of that. It's a legal union and contract that you're entering into. And it also involves lots of family dynamics and also brings up lots of friendship things, all the things that we talk about on this podcast all the time, not to mention the identity issues and all of that stuff as well. So I think that when we're planning our wedding, it's really easy to tell ourselves like, oh, when this is all over, life will get back to normal. None of this will have mattered. And when we keep saying that, when we keep saying like, wedding world is crazy, this isn't who I really am. After this, everything will be back to normal. I'll be myself again. My friendships will return to normal. My family dynamic. When we try to trick ourselves into that sort of frame of mind, I think we miss just so many opportunities to learn about ourselves, to learn about our closest people. And that's really what I care about as your bridal life coach, is your relationship to yourself first and foremost, and also your relationship to the people that matter. I don't really care about your wedding in the way that I think a lot of people think that I do. I think so many things can happen and it's all so interesting and valuable and wonderful. But what I really care about is you and your relationships to your family, to your friends, to your fiance, and to yourself. And so if you were in the midst of wedding planning, or if you just finished and you're looking back on it, I think it's like a really important thing to like, okay, let's apply that logic of how you do one thing is how you do everything to what's going on in your wedding planning journey. And I think you might find that like there's a lot of truth to it. So this is why I end up working with people on much bigger themes than like, oh, how do I handle my guest list? Well, a bride calling me about a guest list issue isn't really calling me about a guest list issue. She's calling me usually about how to handle pressure from people without being mean, right? How to deal with like people pleasing or perfectionism or overwhelm or boundary setting, right? These are really the things that we end up talking about in our sessions, because these are the things that are like being pushed when you're in this wedding moment and this bridal moment that normally you can maybe handle in your regular life, but your wedding is just this intense version of whatever your sort of underlying tendency is. And that's why a lot of times this big sort of emotional reaction happens in this chapter of your life. And that's also why it's the perfect time to happen, right? Let the wedding, a spotlight, reveal to us whatever it needs to reveal. And for some of us, it's some like inner pattern that we really need to kind of like figure out. For some of us, it's our friendships that need to be like totally reevaluated and understood. We just talked about that recently on the podcast about like the friendship fallouts. Like for some people, their wedding was the biggest like memory for them is how much their friendships really changed and what went on with all of that. For other people, it's a big reckoning with your family, whether you're standing up for yourself for the first time in a different way, or whether you're setting new boundaries with your family in a different way, whether you're reaching out to like a parent that you've been estranged from, just dealing with the death of a parent, dealing with the disappointment. There's just a lot that goes on, obviously. And so I think that's just, again, it's such a ripe time to really take a look at what is showing itself to you and then lean into how do you want to be going forward? What do you want to be? So just try on this phrase, like as you're going about your planning, how I do one thing is how I do everything. So if it is like driving you nuts that you are over researching, look for ways in which you're also doing that in the rest of your life, right? Like if finding a DJ took a billion hours and a billion emails and like just way too much energy and effort and you still never felt good about it, like, is this what you do? I also think about this a lot with the dresses. Like, if you have shopped and shopped and reshopped and returned and sold again, like, is this something that happens, this indecision, this sense of like not knowing how to present yourself and feel confident? Like, is this something that's happening in the broader area of your life? Is the real like discord and disconnect that you're feeling around your wedding ceremony maybe actually pointing to a much bigger issue? Like you don't really feel good about getting married in the church, for example, because maybe you're actually like not really sure how you want to incorporate your religion in your life moving forward. And all of a sudden you're really, this wedding is really making you sort of reckon with it. And again, just all the ways, especially with your partner, it's really useful to look at these patterns. Like, are you guys always getting in these kind of really intense fights out of nowhere and then not sure how to like get back to each other? Are you starting to like hide decisions from each other or not involve each other in conversations because you want to avoid conflict? Are you like noticing some patterns with speaking to his side of the family and just all of those things? Like how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so just really look at sort of the troubling parts of wedding planning and how that might be mapping to your life in general. And also for the great things, like the things that you love, the things that you are into, the things that you're really good about, the things that are lighting you up, pay attention to those as well, because they're also helping you in your ordinary life figure out the things that bring you joy, maybe some new hobbies that want to emerge after the wedding that you learned about yourself through this process. But I just think that this is such a beautiful time for self-reflection. I know it is a busy time. There's a lot that's being demanded. A lot's coming at you from social media in terms of like how it's supposed to be and what it's supposed to look like, how many dresses you're supposed to buy, like what trends you're supposed to be incorporating. But I just think that like if you watch yourself do the thing, like be the bride having the experience of planning your wedding, but then also be the watcher. Watch that woman plan that wedding and see if you just can take note, being super loving, being super gracious to her, but just take note of like, this is what's coming up. This always comes up. And so maybe this is one of the areas that we want to either deal with or cut out or reconfigure ourselves around a certain topic. Again, whether it's like the perfectionism or the people pleasing or the body image issues or the boundary issues or being a pushover or being uncertain and insecure at just every turn, or just being obsessed with social media and getting likes and getting comments and feeling validation in that really external way. Like, whatever it is, just try to think about your wedding is doing you a really, really big favor by putting the spotlight and putting that big focus on you and your process and how you deal with money and attention and relationships and identity and change, right? At the core of it, the wedding is really how you're dealing with change, a really exciting and wonderful change, but a change nonetheless. And it can give you such insight into how you do change usually. So I think on the flip side of this, I'm saying to like look at your wedding for like how it can inform the rest of your life. But also when I'm working with brides and they're having sort of an issue, a sticking point during their wedding planning, I'm also like, hold on. How did you deal other times, right? Like one of the funny sort of easy go-to things when a bride is like unsure how she's going to handle her wedding day itself, like all the attention and all the eyeballs on her, we talk about like, okay, how are you on your birthday? Like, how are you when everybody's looking at you and singing to you and toasting you and saying great things about you and giving you lots of love and attention? Like who are you in that moment? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Like, is it hard for you? That kind of stuff is so useful. So looking for clues in other areas that are then going to tell you like, wow, how I always do that. So let's also not ignore that and not pretend we're going to be some other human on our wedding day. Like we're going to be us. People are all still going to be people. So how they do one thing is how they'll do everything. So how people show up normally is also how they'll probably show up your wedding day. This is also related to the advice that I give around like problematic people and how to deal with them. I'm like, expect them to be themselves and don't tell yourself some fantasy that they're going to be really different and fabulous and appropriate and perfect. I mean, hope for that, of course, but don't plan on it. So yeah, this is just a little tidbit I wanted to drop in your ear today as you are on your wedding planning journey. How you do one thing is how you do everything. Just think of all the ways in which that's true for you and all the ways in which that can be helpful. And again, think of it from like the problematic side, but also the good side. Like it can also be reassuring to be like, wow, even though I feel sort of stressed and stretched in a few different directions and overwhelmed and sort of nervous or whatever, in the end, I always treat my people really well. I always show up. I'm always super thankful. I'm always really kind. And so those things are probably going to pull straight through this experience as well. So anyway, before I start going on to more examples, let me leave it there. And if you are, whatever you're going through in this bridal moment, I really do invite you to give yourself a bridal session. This one-on-one like time together can be so powerful, not only to solve whatever problem you're running up against, but also just like a really, really beautiful time to like get your energy right, get your head in the right place, and really prepare for this big, beautiful life milestone and transition moment. So give yourself that gift. You can find out all the information over on karamorning.com. And in the meantime, hit me up, ask me those questions on social media. I love to be helpful. I am Kara the Bridal Coach on TikTok and Instagram, and I will see you over there. Until next time, wishing you nothing but bridal bliss.